reactions are encouraged.
Can we get a cup of coffee in here, please?
Damn good coffee and hot.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Good morning, people of Red. Look how red I am. Can we do something about the redness? I feel kind of red. No, we can't. How about that? Nothing? That's nothing. Good morning, folks. It is Friday. Yes, it is. The end of a busy week. Made it through the week. Good to see everybody. Or I actually don't see anybody. I see a poster of me as Hank Porter wanted back there. It is Friday, the 22nd of 2022. Friday, July 22nd, 2022. The heat in the northern hemisphere continues, and some people are complaining about it. I'm not complaining about it. I love it. I love it because it beats the alternative. Well, the opposite anyway. It would be great. I guess it would be great if it were 80 degrees and not humid instead of almost 100 degrees and very humid. But I'll take it. It's the summer, man. Dog days, as they call it. Yeah, I'm in the red district. Good morning, Kelly. Looking forward to the fabulous Jess Paul joining me at 9:30 today. Great to have Jess back as a co-host. Wasn't sure that was going to come through this week, but glad it did, and looking forward to hanging with her. Our guest will be Max Docelli. Max is a comedian who's been in the game a long time. Very funny guy. Mostly works clean from what I know of him. He will be headlining the brokerage here on Long Island tonight and tomorrow night, which is part of the Governor's Comedy Network. So we'll be good to talk to Max, get his insight, and maybe have a few laughs with him. What are we going to talk about today? Well, I guess I should weigh in on this Chappelle shit that's going on. It's like it's never ending with Chappelle. Probably some people, listen, you'd have to be in a cocoon not to have heard any of the stuff about the hearings last night. There was some, without getting into the politics of it, there was some, I don't know, comic relief, I guess, or hard to say that when you're talking about such a serious thing because, listen, unless you're like a full-blown fucking Kool-Aid drinking Q MAGA cult ready to do anything for the cult leader, it has to be obvious now what we're dealing with. So I don't think there's any point in going over the reality of just how messed up the cult leader is. If you believe, if you're still on the Trump train, as they say, nothing short of that train going off a cliff, falling off the rails, and into a canyon is going to get you off that train. If you're still on that train now, I'm sorry, there's no hope for you. You have lost touch with reality. The reality is basically we had big fat man baby, self-absorbed loser ready to burn the country down for his own interest. And guess what? We told you that before you fucking got on that train. So don't expect a lot of sympathy. We're seeing people who are kind of realizing the mistake they made. Listen, the phrase "the wrong side of history" has been used all too much in the last 6 years. But the reality of the fact that you're on the wrong side of history is coming into focus for some of those cult members. And it's funny to watch how desperately they try to change the subject and just try to do. And then Fox didn't even cover those hearings last night. And I was doing a show with Derek Sheen for the first hour of it. I love Derek Sheen, and I'll talk more about that. But there was, Josh Hawley, and then running Mr. Fist Pump in the air, telling people, to basically go in there and light the fucking world on fire, running out with it like he's got to fucking take his shit. That's pretty funny stuff, if you ask me. Uh, just the mannerisms of the phoniness of the fist pump, followed by the holy shit, I better save my own little fucking white ass and run out of here is in my suit like a little girl. I'm sorry. Uh, pretty funny. Pretty funny. Uh, what is good morning, Kevin? Good morning, Dean. What is this referring to? Maybe only case worthy of an Iron Maiden rebirth in 2022. Uh, I don't know what that refers to. Maybe we know I'm culturally unhip. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please forgive me for my cultural unhipness. Anyway, it is issues with Andy Friday. Looking forward to the big drop at noon today. If you're a Issues with Andy's fan, if you're not, you should get on that. Issues with Andy. Uh, uh, I can't bring that comment in, Kevin. I'm sure. Although I agree with you, I can't bring that in because that would probably lead to me getting a strike on several of the platforms, and I just don't need that. So, the real historical Iron Maiden. I thought you were talking about the band. See, I told you I was cultural. Look how I'm not only red, I look like baked. I look like a lobster. Um, it is what it is. So Derek Sheen was on last night. I love Derek Sheen. Got some new information out of him. He's going going to be doing some date. His calendar is pretty full, but I was questioning him about the idea behind this calendar. Doing a couple of days in Peoria, Illinois, then he goes down to Georgia. It's all over the map. I'll back up to Eugene, Oregon. If you know Eugene, that's Andy's hometown. He'll be there with Eddie Pepitone and JT, and doing some shows there for a weekend. It just seems like, and that's in October. Seems like that would be a good place if our friend Andy wanted to get back into the game to do a few minutes on those sets, and I kind of planted some seeds on that last night. But I was talking to Derek last night about this Chappelle thing. It kind of came up because the question I wanted to ask him, man, I got to backtrack on this because context is important here. Y'all remember? Well, first of all, Derek does a lot of time opening for Patton Oswalt. And if you remember, last year, maybe 6 months ago, Patton Oswalt found himself in Twitter hot water. If as much hot water as Twitter can supply, I guess, in one's life, because he seemed to be supporting Dave Chappelle and a lot of people on the left who think Dave Chappelle is a homophobe, a transphobe, were angry at what was that? Oh, we got what? Ooh, what the hell's going on there? Were angry at Patton for going and doing a set with his old friend Dave Chappelle, and then Patton kind of, sort of, maybe kind of wrote an apology note, or not an apology, maybe an explanation note to Twitter, which is bizarre. Like, you don't know, nobody owes Twitter a fucking explanation for what they do, but he was trying to kind of soften the blow and say, "Listen, I've been friends with Chappelle forever, and he asked me to do this a guest spot, and you don't refuse your friends." So the question I had for Derek was, because I know Derek is his politics are pretty much an open book, and I know where he stands with that. And basically, the question was just this. Well, with more context before I tell you that. Billy Wayne Davis, a couple of days ago, put out a sort of cryptic tweet about people on Twitter giving him shit for still being friends with people who are on the opposite spectrum of his political beliefs. Now, we know, if you know Billy Wayne at all, it's not hard to tell that he is left leaning, to say the least. He's probably, I would say, he's firmly embedded on the left. Now, I don't want to speak for somebody. That's the impression that I get. I'm pretty sure if you follow him, you'll get that same impression. So Billy's on the left. There were some people who are also on the left giving him shit for still being friends with other comedians that happen to be on the right. And Billy was defending his right to be friends with people that he's known forever, and like, I should cut people out of my life because you want me to. All that. So the question I had for Derek was simple. It was, with all that context, it was simple. It was, can you maintain friendships with people that you are so diametrically opposed to politically? In other words, and it doesn't matter that Derek is also on the left, and the diametrically opposed would be on the right. You could turn that around either way. But if you have a political ideology, you have a political commitment and beliefs, core values and principles that you ascribe to, can you be friends with somebody who is completely different just because you've known them, remain friends, especially colleagues, people in your business, other comedians? Can you maintain a friendship with them, even though they may be completely on the opposite side, extremists on the opposite side? And you have to watch the interview to see Derek's answer about that. But the Chappelle stuff was part of that conversation because we went back to Patton Oswalt stuff, and Derek was opening for Patton Oswalt the night that all went down. So he had a unique perspective on that. Now, what happened this weekend or past weekend with the Chappelle stuff is interesting. It's interesting because, first of all, my take on this, I've never thought Dave Chappelle is necessarily a transphobe or a homophobe in any way. I think even though somebody may be a professional communicator and very good with words at using words to make people laugh, they're not always the most eloquent communicator in terms of ideology, what they truly believe in, and principle. There can be a difference. You can be really good at using words to craft laughs out of people. That doesn't necessarily mean you're ready to run for office or articulate civil rights for groups that you're not part of. I think Chappelle is very, very committed to civil rights for African Americans, Black people. And that's what I just said there. That's always an ongoing. We talk about pronouns and stuff and mislabeling people. That has changed my entire life. African Americans, Black people. When I was a young man, it was appropriate to call Black people, African American people, Negroes. Some people call them colored people. Today we hear the term people of color, but I'm sure at some point, and it could even be now, the word black, it could be offensive. Some people don't like to use the phrase African American. So, all this stuff is kind of it. There's not an equality in the way the LGBTQ people are saying pronouns, but there is a consistency in that the way we treat words, the way we use words is always gonna continue to evolve and become under scrutiny. Now, when I was a kid, the word queer would definitely get you in trouble. It would mean you were a bigot and but now it's part of the vernacular. LGBTQ, what does the Q stand for? There it is. I mean, so we don't know what words to use, but I think Chappelle is very committed to civil rights for African Americans, Black people. And he feels like there is an inequality of the way the two groups are fighting for their fair share and to be treated with respect and equally on the law, on their in society. And maybe he has a point, maybe he doesn't, but I don't think that makes him a transphobe. Some people will say, "Well, just jealous that one group is jealous, envy that one group is able to manifest change in how they are treated with respect faster than another group, the group that he happens to be part of." I'm really struggling with how to describe what I think is going on there with Chappelle. So I don't think I don't think he necessarily hates trans people. I think he would like to see the kind of change that they have manifested towards their community relatively quickly in his eyes, as opposed to what it's taking Black people in America centuries to try to move the ball forward. So I think there is a little bit of resentment there, but I think what he's trying to articulate is his case, and it gets caught up in people calling him all sorts of things, calling him a hater. I don't think that's him. I just think he's really caught up in a web of inarticulation. He can't really articulate his ideas in a way that's not going to piss anybody off. And the more he tries, the worse it gets for him, or maybe the better it gets for him, depending on your perspective here, because he's still selling out shows. The people who are in his fan base are as committed to him as ever, if not more. Uh, I'm not sure what Kevin has when's the last time two families of gay people started a brawl at Disney World? Probably never. That I know of, but I'm not sure what that has to do with the conversation. If you want to articulate further what that has to do with this conversation, I'm all ears. Um, it just seemed like it came out of left field to me. Um, so I don't think that Chappelle is necessarily a hater, but I think what happened this past weekend. Now, this is really it's beyond just people calling him transphobic and all this stuff. He had sold out a show at a venue that is known in the past for having people who say controversial things, comedians who said controversial things there. They decided that they were going to cancel shows that were already sold out at the last minute. Now, Chappelle found another venue in the same town to do those shows at, but it's a very weird thing. Like, the place had no problem. They knew about the controversy when they booked Chappelle to be there. They knew about it while they were selling tickets. It was at the last minute they found conscience about what they believed in, or did they? Or was it just succumbing to pressure from groups that were protesting? I don't know, but it's very weird that you were okay with Chappelle when you hired him, when you booked him, when you planned on having him there. You were okay with him for the last several months while you sold tickets, every seat in the house, for a couple of nights. And it wasn't until the day before the show that you decided, no, this isn't what we're about. And again, it's a club, a venue that has had some people with some really controversial stuff in there. So I think that's a little bit weird. Uh, Kevin saying one group puts up its own roadblocks to acceptance and one doesn't. Um, so you're saying because if I have this correctly, I just want to make sure I have it. Apparently, and I'm just guessing from the context of your comments here, that a black family or black people started a brawl at Disney World. So that's the reason that um, black people should not get equal rights. Is that the case? Is that what you're saying? I'm just trying to. And again, I'm not trying to start an argument here. This is pointing out basically what I'm saying. That not saying that's my opinion, but I feel a large portion of America does. Okay, but this is the problem that I think Chappelle has. What you just said, if you were a famous person, you would probably get some hate from that. And then backtracking from or trying to explain your position in a way that doesn't make you seem like a bad guy becomes really difficult because people have already made up their mind about what you said and the intent and what's in your heart, even though that might not be the intent or what's in your heart. See, this is I don't even want to get into whether Chappelle is his case about black people civil rights versus trans people civil rights. Whether that's I think the issue with Chappelle is people don't understand what he's saying, and they're assuming because they had an emotional reaction to the very first words he said in one of his specials, going back 2 or 3 specials about this thing, and they put it in their minds that he's a hater and now can't listen to him as he tries to explain his position further. All he does is complicate the issue more. Can't It's like me when I said that I was pro life. A lot of people assumed that that meant that I was not for women's rights, and that there was a little bit of backlash again. And I got lots of hate mail. I can't believe I thought you were on our side. I am on your side. I am pro life, but I think pro choice trumps pro life. Trumps. Oh my God, I hate even saying that word. As a Trump, women's rights is more important than whatever I feel about a fetus's right to live or have a life. So trying to explain that just got me in more trouble. I can be pro-life and pro-choice and have my priorities on pro-choice. So I do think I am pro-life. I would love to see every pregnancy be a wanted pregnancy. If people got pregnant, if a woman got pregnant, I would love to see that it be by her intent, something that she wanted. If it's not, I think it's completely her choice to deal with it as she may, and as she wants to. So I think you can be pro-choice and pro-life, but that just saying I was pro-life got me in a whole lot of trouble. And so I'm kind of empathizing with Chappelle. I think this is where Chappelle is right now. I think no matter what he does, he can't explain in a way that is going to satisfy people that have made up their minds that he's a hater. There's no way of backing out of that from now. From here, people are always going to consider him a hater and not really listen to the words he says, but listen to how or pay attention to how they feel about the words he says. It's a big difference. It's a really strange controversy with Chappelle. Now, on the other aspect of it, what I actually asked Derek about, can maintain friendships with people who are so fucking far on the other side of your beliefs, principles, values, and all that kind of stuff. Can you maintain those relationships, especially as a colleague in the same business, professional comedy? I find it, even in real life, very difficult. I have friends, I'll explain this to Derek. I have friends that I go back 50 years with, who I had great relationships with up until 2015, when Donald Trump announced he was running for president. And then I had to say, I was completely opposed to the man. I knew who he was. I knew what he was going into it. Again, if you're on the Trump train, a lot of us told you in advance what the hell you were getting into. But I still have a lot of those people in my life, and I can enjoy their company as long as we don't talk about politics. But here's the thing: we can't get into long form conversations with people that, or I can't, for a long period of time without something political entering the discussion. And when it does, if they are so far opposed on the opposite side of where I am, it's going to get tense. It's going to get unfriendly. So I don't think, if you go back to Billy Wayne's statement about telling people that, on Twitter, that he has a right to be in, right. I don't know if he used the word right, but he's got friendships with people who are completely on the opposite spectrum of politics, and he maintains those friendships because he's known them for 50 years or 30 years. He's not quite as old as I am. uh, and doesn't have to cut those people out of your life. I see that, but when I see people who are so passionate, people like Billy and Derek, and they are committed, clearly committed to the things they believe in. And so, and when you talk about things like women's rights and minorities' civil rights, if you're committed to that, and then there's somebody on the other side who is against that, how do you maintain with friendships with people who want to enslave is the right word, women, black people, Hispanic people, whatever, they want to control them, want to treat them as unequal? How do you maintain friendships with those people? I don't know. I don't know. It's a question. Anyway, not to get too serious here, but that is at the heart of the discussion that's going around about, you know, Chappelle and the other comedians who are distancing themselves from him. Can you maintain friendships with somebody when you don't even understand what they're trying to say? And I do think, just wrapping this up, and maybe we're not wrapping it up. Maybe I'm just putting it on the shelf for a second while I bring Jess in. But I think a big part of the problem with Chappelle is his inability to articulate what he really feels, and a lot of people are interpreting what he feels as hate, when I think what he's feeling is envy. He wants, and not, to be a psychoanalyst for the guy, but I think what he's looking for is the same kind of advancement for his people, as the LGBTQ people have been getting. And it's I don't know. It's not for me to judge somebody like Patton Oswalt for standing by his friend, but still wanting to hold on to his own principles that are diametrically opposed to that friend. It's a tricky. Life isn't always easy, folks. Especially when you look like a red shiny lobster like I do today. Anyway, somebody who doesn't look like a red shiny lobster, she looks like a beautiful young woman, is here with us. Good morning, Jess.
Good morning, Matt. Well, thank you
Like
so
lobster?
much for
Can I?
waking me up at the crack of dawn. No, I'm very
I
happy
didn't
to.
wake you up. Your alarm did. Would,
That's true.
do you like lobster?
I can't remember the last time I had it. Like I never think about it. It's nothing I seek out. Like,
Yeah.
I need some lobster in my life. I don't know why. It just slips my
Well, you
mind.
have some lobster in your life right now. So,
I
uh,
was just listening to your conversation. And I don't know if you wanna drop it, but I'm sure that I can
Yeah, you
hype
got
up.
opinions about it? I'd love to hear them.
My
Good.
gosh, too many to share, Matt, at this early in the morning, but, so just speaking about being friends with people on the other side of the line, I what a human struggle, and I'm sure that like, I try to think because, you would be able to answer this. I'm watching the news now, watching all the, current events and thinking like, has it ever been this crazy in the US? And I'm sure it has, like the divides and everything in some instance or another, right, like fighting for civil liberties, all through the 70s and, the 90s. But, I get to experience this firsthand now as an adult watching what's happening. I I've had some people that I have dropped, like, I'll tell you one story about a filmmaker. This was one of the first filmmakers that I ever worked with, and to the degree and I was so close to him, I had been in multiple, productions of his, loved his writing, and, one thing that I really prided myself on put myself on a little pedestal, give me a trophy, is that I felt like I was able to work with people on the other side of the lane. Like, we talk about bigotry and everything or biases. And, I think of myself like, oh my gosh, I have like no biases. I'm not bigoted at all. But when I really think about it, like, it's kind of the opposite. When you think of bigotry, you think of racism, you think of sexism and not being able to understand communities like the LGBTQ. But my biases come with people that are religious. That's something that I don't understand. It's something that I personally cannot jive with, do not understand. And one of the first filmmakers I ever worked with was Christian, and he had this big family, and I knew all his kids, and I would like take pictures with his kids every time I was over. Was working with this guy for years, and what ended up happening is his daughter was going from being a child to being a teenager, and one day she posted on her Instagram herself like, throwing up the peace sign in front of a Trump flag, and I had no idea. Well, I always knew he was a little conservative. Again, that was where I was like, "Oh my god, Jess Paul being able to, like, work with everybody." And I was just so shocked because I knew he was conservative per his Christian values, but I had no idea that he had bought into Trumpism because she was like 13 years old. So she was obviously like listening to what dad said. Like, I stayed away from his like privatized Facebook because I knew that, I don't know. It was like being like blissfully ignorant just in order to have a friend like this. And I ended up, I don't know if I sent it in a message or a comment, and, it seems kind of childish now, but I wrote, like, kind of a paragraph of dissent to the little girl, to the daughter, and it wasn't mean, it wasn't nasty, there was no name calling, of course, like, that's ridiculous, but I said in essence, like, "I hope that you grow up to develop your own ideas and to be skeptical and to, not necessarily hop onto what dad says." So
Hmm.
she, I gotta say this, Matt. I have this problem with like I have a running rank list of people that I make cry with my opinions. I don't know how I do it. Like I try to soften it every time I do, but it doesn't end up working. In fact, I think I'm giving someone a gift of my advice, and it does. I don't know. I've been working on it my whole life. Like this has been going on for years, but she got really upset. She ran to dad, and he wrote back to me again his own novel, um, and was like, "I had no idea you were into identity politics." And I was really confused by that, especially thereafter, because I was still in the shock that he was a Trumpster. I didn't know, and wrote. I remember thinking afterwards, after I kind of wrote like, I guess we're not friends anymore because we were going back and forth a lot. Thinking like I'm into identity politics. His daughter was just like wrapping herself in a Trump flag. Like I don't understand. I mean, I guess identity politics. He meant like you subscribe to distancing yourself or othering yourself from other people. And I didn't actually mean to do that. I never meant to like cut off my friendship with him. I just wanted to say that to his daughter, and hopefully she would eventually see clarity. But now I literally went from, working with this guy on multiple projects, having future like pipeline projects in the back of our, schedules, and then all of a sudden the friendship went away. So, I'm sure that a lot of us have stories like that. And then of course when it comes to the big question about what's going on right now with women's rights and abortion rights, I it feels so personal. Does I mean, it just like if somebody is calling themselves pro-life and they're against uh me getting to decide if anything ever happened, if contraception, the first line ever failed, like that I would not have any other options. Like I'm just not having sex with men anymore because I live in California, so I'm really just coming up with an excuse to not date these guys out here. But
I'm all
but
for that. I get that 100%. I wouldn't either.
but this it feels like a personal slight. It feels like, and of course they'd say, oh, but not you, but it's like, but I'm ingrained into this problem. Like I'm part of the people that are now getting freedoms taken away. I did this chart. I've started with a life coach. My friend, she's trying to build a life coach business, and so I feel like I am getting this free therapy. We have been 2 pages into a work packet, and I have cried both sessions, dog. Like I don't know, like I've never gotten to sit down with somebody and say some of the, like, I'm a big personality here on YouTube, and I'm always talking. I honestly, you haven't got a word in edgewise since I came on.
No, I'm
So,
listening, but
but I filled out a lot of the work, and one thing that she did was to outline our core values. I came from a Catholic upbringing, and for years have just been thinking of values as, do I disagree with the Catholic values? Do I agree with some of the Catholic values? And all I've ever been doing was weighing and measuring the rules on the tablets, like the rules on the rocks, as I was saying. And I never really thought about actually disseminating my own values from scratch. And so we did this, and we separated into quadrants, and I realized that the value that overlapped the most was freedom. And when you think of freedom, you think of American flag, bald eagle on the back of a pickup truck. And obviously, like, that's not me, but like that, but it's so weird how somebody on the other side of the line doesn't see the congruity,
yeah.
between that. So,
Freedom freedom is always a balancing act. Where does one's right to freedom to carry a gun get in the way of my freedom to walk or go to a grocery store and not get shot?
yeah.
It's always a balancing act. But I totally appreciate what you just said there. Now I think, and I don't think we're ever going to get through to people, but on the women's rights and the specifically with the right to choose, you said it's extremely personal, and I think that is the thing that people, because there are some people who really are pro-life, but they don't realize, that at the end of the day, it's personal to you, and you should have that right to make that personal, very personal decision, and they want to be able to impose their will about what's right and wrong on you. And that's where it becomes wrong. You can believe, and I definitely have come from this world of it being in pathology and going through 1,000 abortions and 1,000 stillbirths and seeing fetuses on the table and not being knowing doctors who couldn't tell the difference between a fetus and a born child. I definitely believe that life starts earlier than, it's a human being earlier than where we think it is. But I completely understand that it's a very personal thing. It doesn't come. No woman ever wants to have an abortion. She wants to end a pregnancy that wasn't planned. And I think the part of the biggest problem is we don't frame the discussion about this unplanned pregnancy. The real issue is you want less women getting pregnant without really wanting to get pregnant, and the way to do that is making the morning after pill free for everybody. All sorts of
Yeah,
contraceptives, and they're
sure.
against that. So what you're saying? You just want to
Giving us
impose your will
literally
on
no
people,
options. I
right?
know. And one metaphor I think about, or just like one visual that I think about is when a school gets shot up, it's headline news for weeks, months, sometimes not because there's so many of them. But when a woman has an abortion, it affects no one but her. Like that's the problem. And when you have these arguments with, we'll say the conservative right, it's almost like you're not having the same arguments because, you know, people on my side, on the, we'll say the left side, are saying like, but I don't believe that Dumbledore's in the sky watching over me and making these rules. And they're like, but God. And you're like, no, I don't think, like, I don't subscribe to that. And they're like, but God. And there's no conversation to be had. It's really difficult when it comes
It's
to that kind
so
of thing.
weird. I mean, because I understand the need to want to believe in something bigger than us, and but how? Because I know so many really truly intelligent and smart and educated people that are Bible literalists that believe a 600-year-old man built an ark and had two of everything, including dinosaurs on that.
Mhm.
And the world is only
But he
six
had
thousand years old.
dinosaurs? Where did they go? They didn't survive the flood.
Well, the Earth is only 6,000 years old.
Right,
So, they
right.
had to have dinosaurs on the ark, 2 of each kind of dinosaurs, by the way.
Yeah,
Because this was a part of a actually saw a guy in the at the Noah's Ark exhibit in Kentucky, who was interviewing him, and they were talking about how there were dinosaurs on the ark. And these are people who got masters and PhDs, and they're not stupid by intelligence standards. They could pass a test, but to actually believe in it, it's baffling to me how you can be a Bible literalist and take that stuff word for word. Like, I can understand you believe there's something bigger than us. There's lots of people that have
I
all.
believe that I understand how someone wants to. I mean, it's scary to think about what's on the other side if well, to some people. I'm, like, so cool with lights out, long nap. I will sleep when I'm dead kind of
Yeah,
thing, you know?
that's my position. I'm not afraid of being dead. I'm afraid of the moment of dying.
That's true. Like, I'm thinking about the perfect death at this point where, like, I don't see it coming, it happens fast, 'cause I've heard a lot of people my age that they have nightmares of dying and they're so afraid of dying, and I'm like, I just I don't know. I feel like it's gonna be if I at least don't know, it's gonna be a nice little
Well,
nap.
I'm afraid of dying, and but I don't, because there's no good way. And I have thought about this. I did a
You
whole
have?
show on death and dying. Like, what's the
I gotta
best
check
way
that
to
one
die?
out.
One guy told me freezing to death is the best way to die because, but that's for the moment of death because freezing is terrible to me. I hate being
Yeah,
cold. But he's according to science, the part of the brain that freezes, that causes death produces an experience of euphoria right at that moment. But yeah, you got to go through hell in
right.
free because yeah, I need a coat. Give me keep me warm. I don't like the cold.
No, no, no.
So there's no good way to die for me, and I cause myself major anxiety by thinking about not being dead. I'm fine with being dead, but how painful is it going to be? And what's the easiest way to die? And I don't know that there is an easy way to die.
Have you thought about what you wanna do how you wanna be, disposed of, I mean?
I've thought several things. First of all, at this point, I think I'm on the cremation side of it,
Mhm.
but I also thought about they have this they take your DNA and infuse it into plants and
Yeah.
grow trees.
Honestly, that's actually so I've been looking into this a lot. There's a channel on YouTube called, Ask a Mortician, with Caitlin, and she's funny and she's jokey and she talks about death like it's, going to a pool party and everything, because she wants to be very positive about it, because I mean it happens to all of us. So she's been exploring a lot of different ways that you can be disposed of. And some things that she has explored was turning yourself into feed for woodland animals. I think that that comes with, like, that's a cremation process and then and then added to like a block of feed. But there's another one, and I'm like so for this. And it's been weird because I was talking to my parents about it, because I mean, anybody can die at any time. Imagine if I go before my parents, who knows? Like, this is what we're talking about. Like, it could just come out of the blue. And I think that this person's in Seattle, where you are being put into a capsule on a wall, like a Japanese hotel, and you are like covered in like a biodegradable blanket, and you turn into dirt, like dirt, and there's tons of it afterwards. Like, you can fit a truck bed, I guess, with all the extra stuff that's in there, and you literally turn into dirt over, I think, a month or so. And you're the people who survive, you can come and pick it up. And I mean, there's a couple different things you can do with it. You can either have people pick it up, or and like use it in their garden, which beautiful, or you can donate it to like they're in partnership with a forest that will take your dirt and reforest this area where the salmon are, during the reproductive season, they're swimming upstream, but the water has to be a very certain temperature, and there has to be foliage coverage for them to survive. So not only are you being used to plant trees, but also like, keep the salmon alive. And I'm like, that's it. Every time I watch this video that where Caitlin goes and explores this,
Well, if you're a
facility.
naturalist or nature person, I there's really this is what, because on my show on Death and Dying we talked about, there's nothing non-natural about becoming worm food. I
Yeah,
mean, I mean that's what happens when we bury people. I think
but
we
it
got
doesn't.
caught
We
up.
put ourselves in cement boxes and we're filled with formaldehyde. Like,
I
I don't
know, I
know where
know
that
that's
happened.
what I was just gonna say. We've
Mm,
made it an unnatural thing,
yeah.
but so you know what? I think the worst thing, because having lost a lot of people in my life, I think the um the worst thing is doing what you just said, and then putting a stone there, and because I don't go anymore, but all that stone is a place for you to go and relive the pain of not having them there, remind you how much you miss them and all that kind of. It's never a good experience to go to a grave site, but we
Mm,
do this, and it's a torture thing. It's like, and then we feel obligated to go put flowers. Like, they don't know there's flowers.
right.
It's just so ridiculous, and it's such a painful experience to me that I just think human beings are just stupid.
That's very insightful. Like, I mean, I agree. Like, the funerals are for the living, for, I guess, some people that find comfort in it. But I'd rather like have a rock party. Like, I'm gonna like force everybody to listen to my iPod, my Spotify playlist, and like that's what you can do. Like, they were showing examples of the funerals at this. I don't know what the facility is called. I'm such a good advocate for them. Who put you in a Japanese hotel, and there was one like metalhead that like they all gathered. They had a ceremony where they did like kind of lay this person to rest. They put the blanket over them. You cover them with like, shrubbery and everything, not shrubbery, but like different little, biodegradable plants and stuff like that, so that you can literally turn into compost, and just like, listen to their music. They were buried in like their favorite band tee, and it was like really cool.
I think we need to map out how where this conversation went, because it
Mm,
started with me talking about asking Derek Sheen, who was on the program last night, how he maintain and he doesn't, how he maintains friendships with people who are
oh,
completely on the other political side,
mhm.
and we went from there to abortion rights to
To
well,
dying.
trans stuff to abortion rights, and somehow we ended up in death and dying, and how we dispose of body. What a roadmap of
So
that
goes the
conversation.
podcasting life.
It's interesting how sometimes if you dissect how conversations evolve and the path they take. Um, But yeah, so on the Chappelle thing, if I may. Now,
Mhm.
the comedy part of it, I actually don't believe that Dave Chappelle is full of hate in his heart for trans people. I think he got caught up in a bad articulation of what his position really is, and once that bad articulation was out there, there is no way for him to talk himself out of it. With
Mhm.
some people have made up their minds that he's a hater. He can't, everything he says just buries himself a little further with those people. Now, the odd part about it is people who are haters have made him their champion. People who hate trans people
Oh, yeah.
are glomming onto him like he's their leader and propping him up in that way. So it is complicating things and maybe pushing him towards a place that he wasn't at in his heart. You got any thoughts on on, because I'm having a difficult time articulating my empathy for Chappelle. Not that I'm supporting necessarily any of the specific comics that he said, but I do think I've found myself in that position where I stated something I thought was consistent with many people's values and principles, for people to misunderstand me and then not have a way to articulate it back to no, you're not listening to what I'm really saying. You've already decided that I'm full of hate, and you think you're making ideas about what's in my heart. I'm just trying to clumsily, as every human being is, trying to articulate what I really think.
That
What
I
do you
mean, I feel like that is the problem on the modern left, and it feels like and that's I call myself I thought that I was the most liberal person that could exist until Trump came along and everybody just made the right their enemies. But for me, I was like, wait a minute, though, we have to have conversations with these people. Like I said, my friend who I kind of cut out, I didn't expect to cut off that friendship until we had that conversation, um, to go back and forth and try to discuss what we felt and everything. But it ended up happening and unexpectedly, like I said. And I feel that you're right. I don't remember. I remember when the initial comedy routine came out about Dave Chappelle. I watched at least the extended part of it where he was expressing his views, and to me, it just sounds like ignorance. Where and so the left immediately they're against bigotry and everything, but I feel like again they're not computing that they're too quick to judge as well. Where I feel like this is like the trial of two different um incongruencies again. Like I was saying the last time I was on the show that we say pro-life, pro-choice, but actually pro-choice is right here. And like there's a bunch of other weird stuff over here, like one child policy, euthanasia, forced sterilization and everything.
think?
But I always wanted the left to be a little bit more instead of being just opposite extreme and opposite, pitchfork, like they have pitchforks, we have torches kind of thing. I think you were talking about that on one of your pods or what, or no, actually I was on Rogan. I listened to a Rogan episode after our conversation the last time, and um I wish that we were like it was more so like pitchforks and uh tolerance seminars. Like I wish those were the opposites, but sometimes it's not. I wish that more of us were the bigger people, but we've got a bunch of 15-year-old on Twitter that apparently represent all the libs. you know, that's who we have platformed.
I gotta ask you because you just said, and now because I get most the biggest complaint about me is that I talk too much about Rogan. This is the most of the not most, a lot of the hate mail I get is, man, you're obsessed with Rogan. But since you just brought it up, this week I've had, and I don't know what episode you watched, but this week I've had a
I watch
new
Tom
problem
Segura.
with Rogan, and you have a good perspective on this being in L.A. And he's not in L.A., but he was talking about the homeless problem in L.A.,
Hmm.
and he was outraged that first of all they have 4 porta potties on the street. He saw that there were porta potties, and why should they have porta potties and all? And what do you want these people relieving themselves in the street, whatever? So he has no empathy for that. And Tom Segura was his guest, and they were talking about
Yeah.
how to deal with it. And Rogan made a joke, which is not really a funny joke, but a joke nonetheless. He had a smirk on his face when he said, "Why don't we just shoot him? Why don't you just shoot them all? Shoot all the homeless people?" And I thought, well, this is what happens when you're out of touch. You lose all empathy for humanity, and you're blaming you're blaming people who have nothing because your life isn't perfect. Because what you really want, what you're really saying is, I want my sidewalks clean because I want my life to be absolutely perfect. And how dare these people who have nothing get in my way and dirty up my life and dirty up my streets, rather than saying, wow, we have a real serious homeless problem in the city. How can we, what's wrong in the system that's making this a problem? Why is this happening? And why are so many people so destitute? Taking your heart completely out of the picture and saying, it's all about me. They're ruining my life. We got to get rid of these fucking loser homeless people. Your take on that?
So I did watch that episode. That's the episode that I actually watched because Tom Segura is one of my favorite comedians. I actually didn't know he had a podcast, which will sound stupid to any Tom Segura fan because he's had it literally since 2010 apparently. But I actually learned about it and watched the Tom Segura episode because another channel was reporting on what he had said about that. The thing is, and maybe this is Chappelle's problem as well. I don't remember exactly how Chappelle articulated his point of view on trans. I know that it was muddy. I don't remember exactly what he said because it was a little while ago and it's in the controversy still railing on. But with Rogan, it was pretty clear to me that how he was saying it was sarcasm and satire. He said, why don't we all shoot them all, because that would be one thing that we wouldn't get in trouble for. And he was, as much of a gun guy as he is, it seemed like that he was being, sarcastic about how many rights guns have these days, and that they would be able to get away with it, especially when you are considering what level of status and importance the homeless people are in right now,
Right.
as far as, how we view them. So, because that's a lot of advocacy groups jumped on the topic of the day, and I hope that that's what they were doing, because that's another thing that the left just like gets so bad. Like they're just not good at disseminating smarter comedy. It makes me sad that, not even smarter, but like comedy in general, like they don't understand when something is said for satire. Like one of my favorite drag queens, I just watched one of your episodes where you brought in an author of a book about drag queens. One of my favorite drag queens um, is Sharon Needles. She's a Pittsburgher, and she's one of the smartest queens I've ever seen. She won RuPaul's Drag Race, I believe, season 3. And one time she came under tons of fire for wearing a Nazi uniform during like a ridiculous Nazi uniform. Like it was very much drag. It was very much fashion. And she literally had to sit through an interview to articulate to these kids who are just stand for everybody's rights, stand up for everybody, even though they're not like trans or whatever. I think that they were like either trans and gay because they're in that community. But it was another instance of two people having an argument and they're not having the same argument, where Sharon was like, I was wearing it in order to play satire of how evil these people are. I'm wearing a costume to embody a villain. And these kids could not understand that just putting a swastika on something automatically means that you like that's not how modern language works.
Right.
Uh, you know, um And
Context matters. Definitely, context matters in all
not to
things.
everyone. Like we try, a lot of us try to say that, like you've got to listen to the entire clip. You've got to understand where this is coming from. But that takes a lot of time. That takes, like, it's too easy to read the headline and not the article, or even in honestly, this was similar with the Johnny Depp trial. I watched all of it. All of it. It went on for 6 weeks, and I watched it from beginning to end. So
Why?
I saw, oh, it was fascinating, it was riveting. For the first time, I was, like, listening to it on my walk to the post office instead of listening to my music. And of course, there's so many things, many topics that you attribute to what happened or what it means, what this whole thing meant, the whole trial meant to other people. But what it outlined most to me was how you can rely on the news that you watch peddled, documentaries, certain stations. And in the fallout, I watched people clip and skew and uh leave out a lot of parts of the trial to set Johnny up like he was this master manipulator. And yet, even though we watched a live stream version of the judicial process, the entirety of, trial until proven guilty, and I watched it, and yet so I saw in the media, like in real time, try to mold it to their own narrative.
That's
So I feel like that woke me up to a lot of, I have, when I have to take a stance on these situations, I'm always going to be tiptoeing around in the center of the line, because I'm not gonna put my opinion on something that honestly I haven't done tons of research on, or at least watch the whole thing. Um, but so many people are, and so many
that's
people
interesting because I understand the fascination with celebrity, and I also understand when there are these relationships that are breaking down, that can be like a train wreck, and you want to know all those stuff. But to me, maybe it's a generational thing. I never understood the fascination with that whole trial. Our guest is here now.
Oh,
Uh,
great.
uh, I don't know what the triple A part of it. Max Docelli is a very funny comedian, been in the game for a long time. He's got a lot of energy for a comedian that basically works clean a lot. He's very animated, and I love his delivery style. Kind of, I want to talk to him about this because some of his hand mannerisms, talking stuff,
I do
he's
too.
definitely like
Got some
from where
questions.
I'm from. He's got this kind of thing, but it also reminds me because people used to accuse me of this when I was younger of watching too much Howie Mandel. Remember Howie Mandel when he saw like hands all over the place?
Sure.
Max is one of those guys. He's here now, ladies and gentlemen. Please open your ears, open your minds, and help me welcome Max Docelli to Coffee
Woo!
with the Dog. And he's headline.
Buongiorno, buongiorno Matt, Jess, come stai? Molto bene, tutto faccio,
That's right.
All right. Now I didn't understand a word of that,
I
but
said good afternoon, Matt and Jess.
good morning,
Oh,
afternoon.
actually, good morning, yeah.
Yes, I know you were up early. So that's a lot to. I just want to mention before we get started, you're headlining brokerage over in Belmore, Long Island, which is part of Governor's. You'll be there tonight and tomorrow night.
I am?
Yes, you are. You didn't know.
I've got to
What is the
drive down to
AAA
Long
com?
Island
What is
tonight?
the AAAcomic.com? Is that real? That's a website address? Because I have
Yeah,
Max Docelli.
triple-A-comic.com and also Max Dolcelli at .com. AAA comic wasn't taken, so I took it.
Oh, because it
He's
sounds like
going
a
for the phone book, trying to be at the top of the phone book kind of
Yeah, I
deal.
know, but it doesn't work. You have to pay Google money.
Oh yeah, right. I forgot about the old AAA getting you. That was a trick back in the phone book days. I forgot
Yeah.
about that because it always seemed to me like I just think of car problems whenever I see triple like AAA comic. What is your whole act about cars breaking down? Um, you just started with that Italian stuff. You were born in Italy.
Sono nato in Italia, sì.
Wow.
I was born in Italy.
Yeah. I have my lead singer. He likes to do this Italian medley, Lumanti medley, and I don't think he knows any of the. He's just making sounds that,
Yeah.
and I think if there's a real Italian person in the room, they call him out on it. But people think he's actually singing in Italian. He's just whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but my hands are animated because that's how we talk. We talk with our hands, and we're always I have an uncle in Italy right now. He lost both arms. He can't talk. Hey, you see an Italian man with both hands in his pocket? No, you know what he's doing?
no, what's he doing?
He's talking to himself.
He's
Anyway,
Yeah. So Max, how you're obviously around my age or something. How you've been in comedy your whole life?
I started in 1979. Went to audition at Catch Rising Star
Wow.
in Manhattan, and the other comedian that night at the audition was a guy named Bill Maher.
Wow.
And
Yeah, but that's a controversial name.
yeah,
Do you now? Does he still know you? Do you still know him? Do you keep in touch? Or
well,
no?
yeah, I haven't spoken to him in years.
Yeah, I spoke to him once on an overnight from LA to New York. They had he had the opportunity or the blessing to be sat next to me on a red eye flight from New York, and
Really, he didn't
it
have
was
a private jet.
no, American Airlines. Well, this is 1997. He was
Yeah.
doing real time at the time, and
Okay.
it was the worst 5 hours of his life. I can promise you that. I think he wanted to kill himself when he got off the plane that morning. So now, because most of the people I've talked to, other than Jackie Martling, have not had the longevity in comedy that you have. What are the biggest changes from the time you started in 1978, 79 to now in the comedy business?
There are jokes and bits that are very funny that you could get away with back then. You can't do anymore. They're
That's
just
the biggest change to the
I
business.
I believe, yeah, there's a lot of you have to be careful what you say and not to offend
We were just
people.
talking about that, yeah.
You
Is that a
know,
concern for you? Because it seems like you don't get political, you don't, but
I
then
don't get
anything.
political, but there were bits you could do about certain things and certain. I can't even talk about them on the radio because people will get offended.
Well,
You know?
that's what we started with this morning is about some of that, and I feel like, and I'm going to try to kind of articulate this again in as clumsy a way as least clumsy way as I possibly can. Is that I think sometimes people will hear the first words you say, assume you're a hater, assume bad intent on you, and there's no talking your way out of that. Once they've kind of decided who you are and what's in your heart, there's no way you can say, "Well, you took that comment all wrong." Now, I'm just trying to
It's a joke.
right.
People, when you're doing comedy, it's like you don't go to the theater and watch a play and go, my God, he just killed somebody. Did you see that? No, that wasn't real. It's not real.
Right.
You know.
So, have you personally faced backlash for stuff like that and dealt with that kind of stuff?
Oh, I had a woman one time. Well, yeah, of course, little things, certain things I can't even do anymore. But I do. You and I, we have the same.
No, you got something there. I got nothing there. I got
No.
lobster head.
Oh, you don't even have it back here.
I
Yeah,
mean, I do. I probably I shave so often. I probably if I let it grow,
yeah.
I will. Let my hair grow long. I will have with you.
But there's a joke. I used when I was in high school had a full head. Did you have a full head of hair, Matt?
Oh yeah,
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 you
yeah,
look good, right?
yeah.
Me too. I look good. I remember I used to walk into class. All the girls would be drooling. Of course, I was in special ed.
Now,
Woman
how?
stood up, screamed at me. I have a special needs child. That's not funny. The whole audience
Oh
got really
man.
quiet, staring at me. I looked down and I said, Mom? She walked out.
Yeah. Not to make this political, but last night after the January 6th hearing on Twitter, there were a big fuss about a guy who was sitting in the back row who got a lot of attention. People were saying he looked like Clark Kent. I mean, either one of you are familiar with that?
And I didn't. I fell asleep. My wife and I were watching it, but I fell asleep.
I just want to show you the guy everybody was making a fuss
Oh,
about.
him.
Who did
Oh,
they say?
wait a minute, hold it. The guy way in the
The
back
guy
with,
in the back. This
with
guy.
with the mask on.
That's me with the hair.
Oh.
The guy behind him with the hair.
Yeah.
Looks like he's wearing a
Maybe I should
hairnet.
have put the glasses on him. No, I photoshopped that in. But no, the guy was a very handsome young man, and then Twitter was on fire about him, calling him Clark Kent. He was wearing glasses.
I see.
Yeah.
But it was it was one of the things trending on Twitter last night. Anyway, that's me.
I was going to say, oh my God, he does look like you. Wow.
You got that. You got the mustache. You have the Ronnie Shakes. Remember Ronnie Shakes?
No.
There was a comedian, and he was one of the. He passed away very young. He died probably in his 40s, but he was one of the funniest comics. He used to work at Catch Rising Star. He did 3 Tonight Show spots.
Wow.
And then he went jogging, and poof, he was. And he had the mustache like you had.
That'll teach you. Don't get jogging and doing all that healthy stuff, man.
Yeah. Ronnie had jokes like, "I know hell is hot, but is it humid?"
Yes, it is. It would have to be, because that's the worst part of heat. I could stand 120 degrees in Las Vegas. I can't stand 90 degrees
In
or
New York.
95. Yeah, right.
Are you in New York?
Yeah. I'm in Shoreham, Long Island, but I'm a South Shore guy for all my life, and then got married to a woman.
I've got to
up here.
drive down from Connecticut, so should I leave now to get there by 7?
Oh yeah, you're up in Connecticut now. Up in traffic, and you know what? New York is getting worse, even with all the pandemic stuff. I mean, the roads here are just nightmares, and I'm saying that as Jess is in LA. I'm sure it's worse, far worse there.
I don't drive a car.
You
I
know,
don't have a license.
Jess? Jess, what are
No.
you a comedian?
That's a strong word.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I offend you?
No, I just try to make sure that the bar is low enough so that when I do crack a joke, people are like pleasantly surprised.
Oh yeah.
Where do you work at the comedy store?
What's that?
Do you work at the comedy store?
Serving drinks? No.
No.
No, I don't.
No, just tell them about you. I mean, be fair here.
Oh my gosh, let's give me more of a platform. No, yeah, I'm an actor, and I crack jokes sometimes. I try,
Okay.
and and I just love talking. So
and there's other things. And there's other things.
Oh yeah, and I'm a fake food artist.
Fake food artist.
Fake food artist.
Yeah. Have you had any fake food?
Fake food?
Fucking delicious.
Yeah. The other night I worked. I had to perform a private boat in Boston Harbor. They hired me to do this private party, and I was thinking lobster, Boston Harbor, because they were serving dinner. Nope, chicken.
Chicken.
Yeah, chicken. Fake lobster.
Fake lobster.
Well, here you got the real lobster right here. So now you mentioned coming from Connecticut to brokerage. Are you staying local these days, or you road?
I'm going to drive back. I was going to get a hotel room, but I went online the other day to look at hotel rooms in Long Island right this time of year.
Yeah.
$400 a night.
Yeah.
Yo.
Yeah, really.
And there's nothing here other than the Governor's Comedy Clubs. There's really nothing.
I guess people go to the beach, right?
I guess, but no, my beach is empty, and both beaches. I mean, I have a.
You want a beach?
I'm sounding like I'm gonna like a freaking elitist here. Yes, I have a private beach.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, you're mad. You're mad.
I'm embarrassed by even saying that. It's not. It's not what it sounds like. But the North Shore beaches, I don't know if you're familiar with Long Island. Long Island is two different places. North Shore and South Shore are completely different cultures, completely different geography. Up here where I am now, it's hills, rocky beaches, all that kind of stuff. I live right across from the submarine base in Groton, Connecticut. There, but the nuclear sub base. But the South Shore is ocean, and it's all like prime, like white sands and all that stuff. That's where the people, the Hamptons, those
Well,
people go.
brokerage is in the South Shore, right?
Yes, it's in Belmore. I was there last week, and that place has changed. I don't know. Are you from New York originally before you went to
From
Connecticut?
Jersey, and then I lived in New York for a while. And I used to work at Governor's all the time for years. And this first time I ever worked at brokerage.
Wow. Well, brokerage is a smaller room. It used to be a jazz club when I was a young man. I used to go there for jazz all the time. But that area has now become very much like Queens, Brooklyn. It has a more uh, urban feel to it now. But it used to be suburbs. It used to be all very um, I don't know, very less city like than it is now. So that's what you're going into. You'll probably sell out the room both nights. It'll be packed. It's
I
not
hope.
very big. Governors, when you did that, because the question came up yesterday, how big is Governors? Because people were talking about getting, who can actually play Governors. And I talk about, my dream shows and producing my dream shows over there with like 3 or 4 headliners on it. Like the room's not big enough to support. Do you remember how big Governors is roughly seating
Oh,
wise? And
it was big. It was pretty big, I guess. It's been about 4 or 5 years since I've been there.
right,
It was pretty big. And I started there when it was, guys like, everybody used to work there back then.
right.
In fact,
N-
your funny story. Remember Richie Minervini? He had the East Side Comedy Club.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I
We
first
talk.
started in the comedy, I lived in Jersey, so I had a car. And having a car was, well, Jess doesn't have a car. She lives in LA. But to
She's the
have a
only
car
one in
was like a
LA.
big deal because most of the comics in New York City. And I would drive from Jersey every night to Pips in Brooklyn, and I do a set at Pips, and then I drive and to Manhattan to do a set of either the comic strip or Catch a Rising Star, or Dangerfield, one of the clubs. But I wanted to work in Long Island, and the East Side Comedy Club was like a big deal.
It
So
was.
I called up Richie Minervini, and he said, "Send me a tape." And back then we had cassette tapes, and I tried to get a good one, but I could. So what I did is I sent him a picture of my car, and on the back I wrote, "I have a car, and with the car I can drive headliners in from New York City."
That,
And
that-
she called
Wow.
me up immediately and gave me a date.
Oh.
you know what? I get it, but that's we used to have guys from Jersey come and a headliner who didn't have a car, Otto and George. I don't know if anybody remembers Otto and George.
Oh, he was one of the best.
Right, but he didn't drive himself.
No,
So,
I've driven
and
him many
the
times.
the pay was so terrible in those days. I mean, I think Otto was getting like, and not to kind of put people's personal stuff out there, but I think he was getting 125 for the gig, but he didn't have a car and he would come from Jersey, so we had to put on another comic with him who was a driver, a guy who had a car. We had
Yeah.
to put him on, and so that reduces the money and tolls, gas tolls, and all that stuff. Between two guys now, 125.
Well, back then tolls were like $2 or something like that, whatever it was to go through the tunnel.
Right.
Want to hear a great Otto and George story?
Sure, you got an
All
honor
right.
and George story.
This is Pips. All right, this is back in the early '90s, and I started working cruise ships by then because I do a lot of cruise ships. In fact, I just got a bunch of dates right now. Right before the thing, he sent me a whole list of dates, and I just picked out the ones I wanted. Anyway, um, just got off a cruise ship, and I get a call from at the time. Uh, the brothers Seth and Marty sold it to a guy named Mike. I forgot his last name, but it was before Ray Garvey owned it. Ray Garvey was the bartender, and I get a call from Mike. I just got off a ship, and he goes, "Hey Max, can you help me out tonight? I need a comic." And I said, "I just got off a ship. I really don't want to drive to Brooklyn." And he goes, "Oh, I need somebody to work with Otto and George." I said, "Otto and George, to work with Otto and George is kind of like a special thing. You know what I mean?" I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." All right. This was a Saturday night. So I drive to Brooklyn and I park my car on Emmons Avenue, in front of Pips. I found a parking space, and I'm standing at the door, and Ray Garvey, the bartender, is standing outside with Mike, the owner, and the other actor. There's like 3 or 4 of us outside in front of Pips before the show, and this guy is pacing back and forth from Joe's Clam Bar back, to it. Now we can't swear on this radio station show,
Sure you
right?
can. Sure
Okay.
you can.
So,
Please.
all right. So anyway, he's pacing back and forth, and but it's Brooklyn. You know what I mean? He's talking to himself, but it's Brooklyn, so you really don't. It's not a big deal. And all of a sudden, Otto pulls up in a taxi, and the guy's over right now he's pacing, but he's by Joe's Clam Bar. And Otto gets out of the taxi. He's carrying his bag, and he's walking up towards where we're standing in front of the club. And this guy sees him, and he runs over him. He goes, "You motherfucker! Last night I was here with my friends, and you were making fun of my friends in front of my mother, in front of my friends." He's screaming. He wants to kill him, And Otto, you remember Otto without George?
Yeah, he was just so shy and,
He was shy. He goes,
timid.
what are you talking about? I don't remember. What do you mean? What do you mean? He goes, "What do you mean? I was here with my friends. You were making fun of my mother. I should rip your fucking head off and push it down your throat." And Otto goes, "Well, I don't remember. I'm sorry. I didn't really mean to." And the guy goes, "Well, fuck you. If it wasn't for your friends being with you, I'd kick your ass right now." And the guy starts to walk away. And I swear to God, and Otto he goes, "Well, did you like the rest of my show?" And the guy turned around. He's like, he couldn't even say anything.
Now, you work mostly clean. Otto never. George never. George was the dirtiest
No, he was.
puppet I ever saw in my life.
He opened. Otto and George opened the door for all the shock comics that you see today,
Right.
because he was doing it before anybody had the balls to do it.
But the question I have for you now, your work mostly clean. I know once in a while you're not doing like dry bar comedy. You can throw in an
Oh
occasional.
yeah, when I work the clubs, I feel the audience. I've been doing it for so long. I feel the audience, and I give them what they want.
Right.
I
Working
almost feel like a comedy whore.
working with somebody like Otto and George, though, did you feel pressure to kind of dirty it up even more? Be as dirty as you
Not
possibly could?
really, because they kind of like they have that, and I'm not really, I'm not squeaky clean when I work clubs, but I don't go overboard.
Now,
But
how do you make that transition, like to do a dry bar comedy special, and now, because I think if your natural tendency is to occasionally, like you asked, we can't swear on it, so obviously you have some control there. I don't, which is how I got banned from AM radio 30 years ago. But it seems to me a hard thing to do, like doing dry bar, and not to let an occasional F bomb slip out.
no, well, you learn, you train. I don't know. I've been doing it. Like when I work ships, I've got to do not one but two different 45-minute clean shows.
Right.
Completely different. And you know how hard that is? I'm in my cabin doing my homework, going over bits that I hadn't done in years, but you just learn not to. And then if they ask you to do a late night, but I've been working, like I do corporate and cruise ships for so long that I only use the F bomb once in my act. There's no other joke. There's no other word that can replace it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell me about cruise ship, because I'm thinking, like, if you go out for a week, I mean, generally 2 or 3 day cruises are a thing of the last 20 or 30 years, but generally cruise ships have always been like at least a week out there.
Yeah.
And you have two different shows, but how many actual shows do you do? Do you do a different show? Or you do 2 shows
No,
a
well,
day?
it all depends what cruise line or what ship you're on. There are some ships that have a comedy club. Most Carnival ships have a comedy club, and a lot of Royal Caribbean ships have a comedy club. And then you work the comedy club, and then you're doing 2 or 3 shows a night, and you can do pretty much anything you want, But if you're working some cruise lines, you're doing the main show. So you're like, for example, you get on a Saturday, and then they'll have you either work the welcome aboard show, and you've got to do like 45 minutes, 2 shows one for an early seating and one for a late seating. Like 7 o'clock and a 9 o'clock show for two different audiences, the same show, but it's got to be totally clean. And then later in the week, they've got you scheduled to do two more shows, but for the same audiences, but you've got to be totally clean, but different material.
Wow.
And
That's the thing that would really get me, is because it's like being in a really small town. I mean,
yeah,
you're basically going to get the same people who saw you just a couple of days ago,
I know,
right?
but that's why you have to do different material. And for some reason, somebody in the cruise land world think that it's easy to come up with two different 45-minute clean shows. That's difficult. It's really difficult.
Yeah. The audiences, are they like, because we used to do shows, I brought this up a couple of times this week, surprising to me. We used to do shows at Nobody Beats the Wiz during the lunch hour.
Yeah.
And comedy club turned it into a comedy club at lunch hour. People shopping for modems and fax machines and stuff.
Well,
And
you're working in front of everybody, the children, the kids, the families,
right.
old people. So there's kids in the audience. So you got to be careful.
Yeah, but the problem with that, and the question I want to get with the audience problem we had with the Wiz show, is people who had been there a couple of days before back. Now they saw that comedian, and now they're yelling out requests like, "I know your material so well, I know what you do," and basically, do the bit about whatever. And did you get that on cruise ships? Because that to me
It's
is annoying.
happened. Yeah, it's happened.
Yeah, part of the.
I've seen a lot of weird stuff on cruise ships. I actually had a guy die on me right in the front row.
Oh
Really?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm performing, and this guy did just literally in the front row, just him and his wife, and he's like, and all of a sudden he goes over, and I said to his wife, "Ma'am, is your husband okay?" Oscar!
Hey, not a bad way to go out, right? Right.
Well, what I did was I said, if there's anyone in the audience that's a doctor or a nurse, can you please come down to the front? Can everyone else please leave? And somebody called emergency. And
Put him on.
And
Put him on. We want to take that phone call.
No, I'm not.
No, I've been trying to reach you about your car warranty.
But anyway, the show had to stop. You can't continue while somebody.
Oh yes, you can. And I have
you
a story.
can't.
But I have a story about that. But I before I tell you briefly about that story. There was a guy on Long Island who was and I can't think of his name, Doctor something. It was a German name, and he would perform in surgical stuff and put on this air of like being a real doctor. And there was a time when somebody in the front row had a major heart attack and fell down. And people believed this guy's persona as a doctor. He basically said he was a surgeon. That's his full-time job. And he was a comedian, but he wasn't a surgeon. He was lying, but people believed he was a surgeon. And when this guy took a heart attack in front of him on the floor, he just looked, and people were expecting him to do something. And he like frozen because he doesn't want to blow his cover as not really being a surgeon, but he wants to kind of say, is there a doctor in the house, and not knowing what to do. I think he finally broke down and asked for a doctor in the house, and people were like, "Oh, I thought you, wow, that's not my specialty."
Yeah. I mean, I've seen fights break out. I mean, if you perform you must have seen a fight break out in the audience.
Oh yeah, I've seen people stomped to death. But to your point about not being able to continue, my band was playing an outdoor venue in Lindenhurst, New York, a beautiful arena type setup. It's like Jones Beach but smaller, and we were right in the middle of a set, and I heard this blood curdling scream. Ah! The guy hits the floor. He had a massive heart attack, and basically, everybody stop. And they came out, and they were giving him CPR and nothing, and basically, they trying to revive him. The ambulance comes. They put a white sheet over his head and take him in the ambulance. The guy actually got up and said the Lord's Prayer over him. They took him away. And then they were the owner of the venue was like, "Come on, go back. Come on, start up." And 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, wait. this is not cool. This is in really bad taste. You can't just start up the party again. Oh, yes, we can. People are waiting for the music. He's gone. Don't worry about it. And
He's
so we did
gone.
restart the show. I got home that night and I was
Say
like,
highway to hell.
I was so flustered by that. I went on the band Facebook page and I said, a guy died on me on the dance floor tonight. That's a first time for me, probably a first time for him too. And and I was kind of making a joke about it. And then the people who were telling me that I needed to start up like right away again, and they were getting on me like, you can't make that kind of joke. I mean, you got to be sensitive to the guy's family and all. I was like, you're the ones who was saying, start the show. So yeah, you can just continue the show. Like,
Jess, you ever had anybody die on you?
You see, they're on the other side of the computer screen, so they can be like jacking off, and I would.
Well, you ever have a guy die during sex?
Can't say that I've crossed that line or checked that
Not
off my
yet.
list.
My
Sleep with a
brother's
Rockefeller. Hi.
my brother's ex-wife. Oh, I shouldn't. Man, I'm giving away too much personal.
No, you don't do that.
Her first husband died in the act.
Again, another good way to die. Like, that wouldn't be too bad
For him.
For him, for sure.
Traumatic for her. I mean, imagine being with somebody and they just, maybe it's bragging rights.
Especially if they're on top. Oh my God. Well, you want to hear a funny cruise ship story? I was working on a small ship called, what happened to Jess?
I'm here.
She's yeah.
No, dear. Okay. Oh, yeah. All of a sudden.
Oh, it's you, Max.
Oh, there you are. You want to hear a funny cruise ship story?
Of course, we want to hear funny everything story.
All right. I was working on a ship called the Dolphin. It was a very small ship. It was all Greek crew. This is a ship. It went from Miami to the Bahamas, to Freeport, and then back. It was just 2 to 3 night cruises. Small little cruise line that went back and forth. Okay, my cabin was down on the bottom next to the food and beverage manager, who was a Greek guy, and I go to bed one night and I wake up around 2:00 in the morning to like this woman going, because the cabin walls are really small. And then she goes on. This went on for about 45 minutes. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
And finally it stops and she goes to sleep. And I go back to sleep. All of a sudden I wake up about an hour, 2 hours later, around 4 or 5 in the morning, to the same thing. And all of a sudden she's screaming, no, not there, not there. I jump up and I bang on the wall and I go, not where? Not and they got really quiet. And then the next day I see him. He goes, why you ruin it for me? Why you ruin it for me? And then he goes,
why you ruin my sleep for me? Wow. Yeah, I guess I had a guy on Frankie
I was
King.
wondering where it was. I have an idea.
A guy who was on a cruise ship at the top of the pandemic in somewhere in Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And they quarantined the boat. Nobody on and nobody off.
Yeah.
And he jumped ship.
He jumped ship. I remember. What was his name again?
Frankie King.
Yeah, Frank King. Yeah. Do you know Frank?
Yeah, he's been on the program. But I had him on right after that and wasn't aware of that. And we talked comedy the whole time. He never once mentioned, like, you're on a talk show. Isn't that the place you want to, something you want to talk about?
Working ships anymore. Is he banned now or something? Or
yeah, I think he is kind of banned from that.
You don't do that because he was trying to get to a corporate gig, which canceled him because he made the news.
Yeah, it was all over the news, but it's just surprising me that that's a public, an interesting story, and that's something that if I were a guest on a talk show, that would be something I'd want to bring up, especially if the host, like me, oblivious to it until afterwards. And I basically found out like 2 days later. I was like, damn, he was on the show. Why didn't we talk about this? Jumping ship in Asia and making his way back to the Northwest where he is.
He was trying to get to a corporate gig that he had booked, but when they found out, they canceled him, and I think he lost a lot of work because of it.
That sucks. No wonder he was available to do my show. Now, corporate gigs, you do a lot of those?
I do. I just did one Wednesday, and
What is what is that? Because
well,
I know what corporate means for me. When I go into corporate, I do a lot of corporate work, but for me, I don't have to. Uh, I'm thinking comedians are necessarily have to kind of tailor it to the business. They
well,
want to.
they're like private parties and private functions where a company wants to hire a comedian to do something, or somebody wants to hire a comedian for a party and stuff like that. They could be iffy, they could be. I just did one, all engineers. This company makes makes robots that operate on people. These robots actually do surgeries, and these guys that I work that came to my show, they're all engineers, and also they work with cadavers all day long. So their sense of humor was just not there. It was
Yeah, it,
very
sound,
difficult.
it
Oh,
sounds
you
like
think those
my
people would be a little
background.
freaky, like they'd be open to the laugh,
Yeah.
Sounds like my background. I have background in both of those things, robotics and working with. I worked in. I
Cadavers.
I've done. I've participated in 4,000 autopsies.
Oh my goodness,
Wow.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm serious. And was, until I started in that, the most squeamish person ever in the planet. Like, I couldn't stand the sight of blood, and did not know when I got hired for the position that that's what it was for. I basically thought I was going to be doing videotaping and audio taping and multimedia work. And it wasn't until my first day on the job where my boss said, "Come on with me. We're going down to the morgue." I said, "Morgue? Why?" Why? Oh, you're not squeamish, are you? Totally. And basically that day we were basically had a 400-pound woman on the table, and he brought out a Black & Decker chainsaw. And it's like, wait, this is how you do autopsies, with tools? Yeah, I mean, saws,
Well, a 400-pound woman
hammers.
didn't need a Black and Decker chainsaw.
Yeah.
How big was she? I don't know. I never got back far enough to see all of her. But
Yeah, and it's totally different than anything you would ever imagine. Like, they portray it on television, like, when you see them in an autopsy room, it's nothing like that. I mean, you see people in there without masks on or any of that. You're covered head to toe in a clean suit, all that stuff, and it's really
it
cumbersome. But
must be really sad, especially if you see young people that are,
lots of them, over 1,000 child, and
Oh my
we're
God,
bringing that up this
I
morning.
couldn't deal with that. I could not deal with that.
That was extreme depression, and people would tell me, you got to get out of that business, because it was a really, really depressing thing. It was an education. I've had some really strange careers in my life, but yeah, that's not a happy business to be in. But because Jess was talking about morticians before. The guy who was the deaner there was a mortician. He was the creepy, and I came away with the worst prejudice against morticians and people who work in funeral homes.
Oh no, it wasn't like that Sam Kennison bit, was it? Oh shit, no, really? Ah.
Yeah.
And the guy screwing a dead person.
Yeah, this guy used to love to take young underage girls to the morgue to have sex with them in the drawers where they stored dead bodies. And
Oh my God, no.
he was caught doing that and kept his job.
Wait, the guy you knew or Sam
One of the guys I know, one of the guys I actually worked with, and he actually kept his job after they caught him doing
That's
it.
pathetic.
my God.
Should burn in hell, and
Yeah.
he probably is or will.
Right. And he never, as far as I know, never was a necrophiliac, had actually sex with corpses or anything. But I wouldn't put it past. He was that creepy, and it made me think of everybody in that industry.
These underage girls were alive? I assume they were corpses.
No, they were alive.
Because I was gonna say, like, I mean, we were just talking about, like, we don't know what happens to our bodies after death. So am I gonna play a little devil's advocate? But okay, that's different.
Yeah, no.
That's why you want to get cremated and get it out of the way.
Right. No, so yeah, but these young girls, that was the in for them. That was his pickup line. You want to go see the morgue?
Want to go see a dead body?
Yeah, and that was like, it's a cool thing to do. He was a creepy dude.
What a terrible thing to do to a child.
I know.
Oh,
And I can't imagine anybody saying, "Yeah, that sounds cool. Let's go."
It completely fucked
Honestly,
up
I
their
probably
life.
would have been one of those kids. Like, the closest I've got to anything like that was I took an anatomy class in college because I thought it would be more helpful as an artist. I could learn to draw the skeleton. I ended up just being totally confused. I remember my teacher called me out one time. He goes, like, in a room full of 50 kids in a stadium class, like one of those kinds of classes, and he goes, "Jess, why is your face all screwed? Like, why do you have that look on your face?" And I said to him, like, because we were learning about muscle tendons and how the muscle cell looks. But in the book, there were no photographs of the slides. And I said to him, "I just don't believe you." And he was talking about like the cells like looking like little arms and grabbing on. And I'm sure he was trying to use a metaphor, but I was being a little too literal. This is me questioning everything. But when I did the anatomy class where we actually had a lab, we were dissecting cats. We had a lot
Whoa.
of strays around the college campus, so I'm assuming I don't know. I don't know where they
Yeah.
came from, but,
Wow.
you
Gory.
know, I love cats, but I also kind of pride myself, like, I have a couple superpowers, and basically my superpowers are things that I feel like I can do that maybe the average person's not cool with, and I was like, "I can do this," and I took the knife right away, like I was the person up front doing the cutting. Problem is, I don't listen to directions. It's one of the reasons why I don't drive a car, 'cause there's too many rules to that. I'm gonna kill someone. So, I'm taking myself out of that situation. And with the cat, you're supposed to, when you're dissecting something, you are opening the skin to and then slowly going through the layers in order to actually learn and educate yourself on what's in the body. But I bypassed the skin and went straight through the stomach. So, and we have these cats on ice, for weeks. They're in fridges, and this cat, mine was the only one that was leaking stomach acid for like 6 weeks, and it
Oh
just
my
stunk up
God.
the room every time we brought mine out, and I was just like, "Sorry guys, I'm so sorry." I was a little cat
Wow.
happy.
I
Um,
feel like I gotta apologize to governors for this comedy show
I know
going.
what happened to comedy.
I
My
know.
goodness.
So, let me bring it back there. Now, I don't know how you took that in the
How did we
intro.
get into this subject? Oh, because somebody
Dead people
tried to
die.
put me on stage. Hey,
Right.
by the way, I killed that night. Hey,
oh!
So did that guy get back to the next show? Um, So in the intro, I said talked about how animated you are on stage and basically this stuff. I know. Were you a fan of Howie Mandel's, or has anybody ever said that? And do you take that as an offense, or you take it as a compliment? I
no,
meant it
not
as a
really. I was
compliment.
never. I mean, I remember him when when he used to work the comedy store. I mean, Yuck Yucks way back in the day, and I've worked with him in the past. I mean, here we go. Here's let me see.
Oh,
Oh
there you
yeah,
go.
yeah, cool. Yeah, look like twins.
He's a nice guy. I even shook his hand, and then he went.
That's right.
No.
Right.
Um, no, who did I like? I grew up. See, we talked about me being born in Italy, and when I came to America in 1959, I came over, and my mother. I was not. My childhood was not normal because my stepfather, my father died when I was 5 years old, and my mother put me and my sister in an orphanage, and then while we were there, my mother's sister was living in America already, arranged a marriage, and my stepfather came to Italy and he married my mother and he brought us to America in 1959. But my stepfather was black. So I
Okay.
grew up with a black father in the early 60s and late 50s. And so my childhood wasn't normal. We watched television, but the comedians that influenced me were guys like Wild Man Steve, yeah, because that's what the neighbors used to listen to, the party records, and Red Fox and Dolomite. Oh, not Dolomite. My Dolomite came later. LaWanda Page,
Wow.
So
I
black
grew up
comics.
on Red Fox records too. Flip Wilson, was that one of in your repertoire? Flip Wilson records. We had lots of, because Flip Wilson used to
Oh,
do
Flip
lots
was
of.
funny. Red was. I worked with Red. He was wonderful. Really a nice guy.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Because he was one of those guys who was really, really dirty, really super dirty. I
He
mean,
wasn't. It's funny. He took me to see LaWanda Page perform one night. She was a lot dirtier than him. LaWanda Page was on Esther on the TV show,
wow.
and
So
these
did
were.
you grow up in a black neighborhood?
I did.
Wow.
Yeah, I was
That
basically one of the only white kids there, and then my sister and I, my brother,
very
and
interesting. But all this stuff
I can't
makes
even
us
tell you
aware.
what the black kids used to call me because I can't even use that word now.
Wow.
You know,
Now we're wondering what it is.
they used to call me white N word.
Wow. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
the
That
black
that
kids
was my
called you that?
nickname. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah, that was my nickname.
Wow. So, and then when did you first realize that you wanted to be a comedian?
Well, what happened was I never in high school. When you were in high school, did you do plays and theater and all that?
I
See, I
did,
didn't do
yes.
any of that stuff. I didn't do any of that stuff because my childhood was just so messed up, and all I wanted to is to get away from the world, you know. I started living on my own early, and I met a woman, and she said that she loved me, and I said, okay, let's get married. I was 19, so we got married at 19, which was really stupid. We had a kid, and then she left me. About I was like 21 or 22 years old, and she left me, and I was devastated. And I remember wandering the streets of New York City, you know, and I was on Bank Street, and I just happened to look up, and I saw a sign in front of a studio that said acting classes start on whatever certain date it was. And at the time, I used to I had a little pizzeria. I used to make pizza, you know, and I said acting classes. Maybe I could meet some chicks. That was my only motivation because I figured most of the guys were going to be gay, you know, and I had a better chance, you know. So I took acting classes just for fun, and it was HB Studios. You ever been at HB Studios in New York?
Yeah.
Your Herbert Burkhoff Studio. So I took acting classes, and I found out that I was pretty good at acting, and I did a couple off Broadway shows. And one night, the cast went to the comic strip to see comedy. Yeah, first time I went to a comedy show, and I remember the comedy. Larry Miller was a comedian that night we saw, Jerry Seinfeld, and Uncle Dirty.
Uncle Dirty.
Uncle Dirty.
Sure it wasn't Dr. Dirty? Uncle Dirty?
No, it was Uncle Dirty.
I don't remember him.
Yeah, Uncle Dirty. Robert Altman was his real name, but he used to perform at the Fillmore East a lot, opening for band, toured with the Dead.
Wow.
You should Google the real Uncle Dirty.
The real Uncle Dirty. I will
Yeah,
do that. Right now, we have to
he
say
passed
goodbye to
away. He's dead now, but
we
he
have to
was
say
one.
goodbye to Gov's Network right now because
Oh, we were leaving.
we're not closing the show. But Governor's Network, we just want to remind them. Max will be at Brokerage, which is part of the Governor's. I don't know.
But anyway,